Hey everyone, it's Dylan with SeaTee Aquatics, and today we're talking about nutrition in the reef tank. So what is nutrition in our reef tanks? Nutrition is a combination of both food, elements, and additives that both our coral and fish need to survive. Fish food counts as nutrition going into the tank once the fish food has started breaking down into nitrates and phosphates. These are the nutrients that our coral tend to uptake, as well as algae. With all of that being said, nutrition is super important within our tanks. Everything that we put into our tanks has a direct impact on the tank. The amount of food that we put into the tank will directly impact the level of nutrients in our tanks. Overfeeding generally will cause nitrates and phosphates to increase. Having a nitrate and phosphate increase in the tanks can cause algae blooms, but it's also important to note that you need these nutrients in your tank, as again, they feed both our fish and our coral. There are different types of food that we put into our tank to feed both our fish and coral, and each of these foods are going to have different nutrient and nutrition levels. Something like a pellet food is going to be nutrient dense, meaning each pellet has a high level of nutrition for the fish, as well as it will break down into higher levels of nitrate and phosphate as compared to something like frozen food, which tends to be less nutrient dense, putting less of these elements into our water. Something like a powdered coral food tends to be the most highly packed with nitrates and phosphates, so I'd recommend feeding these only when necessary. On the other hand, it's important to feed your fish regularly, as every fish has a different metabolism. It is important to know what kinds of fish you have and what the requirements for each fish is. If it's something like a tang, more algae-based food is going to be better, and feeding large pellets once or twice a day should be sufficient. On the other hand, if you have fish like Amphius, you'll need to feed smaller pellets, typically omnivore pellets, as much as 5 times a day, as they have a super fast metabolism and need to keep eating in order to keep their energy levels up. After the food has been processed by the fish or simply broken down by the beneficial bacteria in our tank, it comes out in the forms of nitrates and phosphates. As talked about in previous videos, nitrates and phosphates are a feeding source for both coral and algae, meaning that they are key nutrients in the growth of both of those. With that being said, maintaining the proper levels of nitrates and phosphates becomes super critical. Nitrate and phosphate levels can be managed simply by altering your feeding. It's also important to note that it is highly recommended to feed a variety of food to your fish. It's not great to just stick to one pellet. In my opinion, it is much better to feed a variety. Maybe one day you'll do pellets, another day you do frozen food. Personally, I like to keep pellets on an auto feeder, as these are the most nutrient dense feedings. I can control exactly how much gets put into the tank at each feeding in set increments. This way you know exactly over time how much nitrate and phosphate is being added to the system by that. And then I like to supplement frozen feedings in order to give the extra nutrition to my fish. I tend to feed frozen food a little heavier if I notice that the nitrate and phosphate uptake has increased or if coral growth has increased. And if I start to notice a lot of algae, I will decrease the frozen feedings. But as stated before, I keep the pellet food in the auto feeder to keep that as consistent as possible. Furthermore, knowing how much food goes into the system makes it much more predictable and allows for a consistent balance with water changes. Over time, you should see exactly how much your nitrate and phosphates go up during a given week, and then with each water change, you should see how much they go down. At that point, you can control your water changes to help maintain a better balance, or you can control feedings if you are having high levels. With that being said, monitoring your nitrates and phosphates is super important, and controlling them with food going in and water changes being nutrients coming out of the tank is super important. So there you go. Today we've gotten to talk about nutrition in our reef tanks, how to feed our fish and coral, and how to find the proper nutrient balance in your tank through feedings and water changes. Hope you enjoyed what you saw, and remember, please like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications to join us on our journey through the sea. Or drop a comment below and let us know what you thought of the video. Thanks for watching.